Hello and welcome to the G3 Pulse podcast. Joining me today, a year or so on from his last appearance, is Max Francis, CEO and founder of Black Cow Technology. Max, thank you very much for joining us again.
Thank you, Will. It's nice to be here again. Thanks for having me.
Could you kick us off by quickly reintroducing Black Cow for those who maybe didn't watch our last podcast, what the company offers to suppliers and operators, and kind of just your general assessment of where the business's development is at relative to when you founded the business?
Sure, yeah. So Black Cow Technology is a software company. That's what we do. We build, supply, maintain and support software. That software is for remote gaming servers. So we specialize in remote gaming servers. Essentially, the idea of what we do is to give our licensees the ability to take control of their own gaming platform. So we offer a number of tools for that, which we can get into. But ultimately, it's software supply and services around software supply. And we do that in three main ways now: single player gaming, jackpot gaming, and multiplayer gaming. So those are the three strands to our product. And they all interlink, but essentially it's about giving people the ability to have their own games pipeline and control of their own game platform.
And on that second point about where you see the business is at relative to when you founded the business, where would you say you are on your business development journey? Are you kind of hiring at the moment? Are you expanding?
Mm-hmm. Yes, we are expanding at the moment, mostly on the back of multiplayer. So you asked me what was different over the last year. That's probably the biggest difference over the last year, actually, is that people are becoming much more interested in multiplayer remote game servers and multiplayer products. And that is most certainly going to be a big feature in everybody's future, I think. And so we already have a multiplayer remote gaming server framework based around a lot of the principles of our single player RGS. And that's where the future seems to be going already. So I'm really glad that we've already got some progress in that we can use going forward.
Well, that was something I was going to bring up a bit later in the podcast, but seeing as we've gone there now, we might as well discuss it. So you touch on the solution that you launched earlier this year that allows operators and suppliers to develop and offer kind of multiplayer online casino and slot games. So how would you say that Black Cow's technology is powering the games and experiences of the future? To what extent have you future-proofed this solution, and what role do you think multiplayer content will have in this future?
We are all about flexibility in our software and flexibility in the platform. So the single player platform, which we call the open gaming architecture, the single player platform allowed any kind of game and any kind of game feature for a single player game. And we allowed that through game development kits and just flexibility of the platform. And that platform has now been live for 8 years, thoroughly tested out in the market. It's been live with DraftKings for 4 or 5 years now, and has taken just shy of 8 billion bets in their New Jersey jurisdiction, and they're live in 5 jurisdictions across the US. So that's a very well proven platform. And we have designed the multiplayer platform in very much the same way. So with ultimate flexibility in mind, so that our licensees can build their own games and their own game engines, and that those game engines aren't restricted in what they can do. So ultimately, multiplayer gaming is all about being event-driven. It's really event-driven gaming with live events happening, either events that the player is creating themselves, like sitting down or getting up from a table or placing some chips on a table, events from within the game, so say a timer going off after 1 minute and spinning the roulette wheel, or internal events in the game based on the game. If it's somebody's turn now in a game of blackjack, for instance, or if there's something non-gambling related going on as well, that's all supported by the platform. So it's any kind of event-driven activity, interactive between multiple players, all continually connected to one room of activity where they can bet on events taking place in that room. So at the moment, everybody's thinking in terms of products that already exist. So they're thinking of slots. How can slots be multiplayer? Or they're thinking of multiplayer table games. But there's a whole bunch of stuff that nobody's thought of yet, right? There's a whole bunch of stuff, an experience more like Fortnite than an online slot, much more experiential than transactional. Or you could have, for instance, racing games where everybody trains a particular character and chooses how to spend their training credits across various properties and attributes of that character, and then everybody puts their characters into an arena and they race or fight each other, and people can bet on that or bet behind what other people are, how they're training up their characters. There's just some rough ideas, but there's a whole new set of paradigms out there just waiting to be discovered for multiplayer. We don't know what they are yet, but what we do know is that our platform will have to be very, very flexible, enabling any kind of interactive event-driven gaming to go on. And so what we're designing now allows us to do that with the simpler side of things right now: multiplayer roulette, multiplayer baccarat, and multiplayer slots that we're working on. But the idea is that same structure can be used to create any kind of event-driven game.
And in the development of this solution, how closely were you working with operators? I guess they can't let you in too much on what they're looking to develop, but how closely were you working with them in terms of having that flexibility for them to then develop what they need to?
Yeah, so we're experts at the flexibility itself, but we're not gambling product experts. We do need to work with partners on that for sure. So for the online multiplayer table games, we're working with Plaisir in Canada. So they're our partner. They're really the product side of that and the front end side of that. In the case of the slots, we're developing those with Light & Wonder, actually on some of their established titles. So, we're really excited to see those go launching in the next, in Q4 of this year, because those will be actually known titles out there, but with a multiplayer twist on them, essentially. And that's really exciting. And this is always the first stage of a new technology, is doing the old things in the new way before people actually start doing the new things in the new way, if you see what I mean. It's the same with online. When online first started happening, everybody just did the land-based things online. And now we've found new ways of, not just in gambling, but in everything, new ways of doing new products that we couldn't have had before. So Amazon isn't just shopping online. It's far more than that. And we've enabled a whole new industry. And I think a similar thing is going to happen with multiplayer as well.
And would you say that the launch of this solution is something that you'd see rolling out with existing customers, or is it potentially a play for new customers just in a commercial sense? And pursuant to that, what do you think in terms of markets? Is it something that you'd see perform particularly well in America, for instance?
So, yes, regarding who could use this technology, we have two main groups of partners, if you like. One is operators who have product already and want to take control of that product. So, for instance, DraftKings with our single player server and Light & Wonder with our multiplayer server. For instance, DraftKings use our single player server to offer their own blackjack and their own roulette and their own baccarat, branded how they like. They even wrote their own craps actually using our platform, which is actually a really nice version of craps. They've done really well there, and our platform enabled that, and that's really nice. Similarly with multiplayer, it's enabling us to do multiplayer slots that people will know, and there's a twist on how people share the bonus round essentially in a multiplayer slot. So that's the operator side of things. I think you're going to get a lot more game suppliers building their own RGSs as well. So it's a much more powerful commercial proposition for a game supplier to go to an operator and say, here is an RGS already built with all our games on. We just have to connect it into what you've already got, into your own distribution platform. Suppliers have been doing that for about the last 10, 12 years, probably slightly longer, but it's really taken off over the last 10 years. So I think for multiplayer, it's going to be just the same, but more so. So I think somebody who has their own idea for a multiplayer game won't anymore need to go to an existing supplier or an existing operator and try and get them to build it and end up taking some minute, tiny little percentage of whatever's left over for their great idea. They will be able to build that idea themselves with our platform and operate their own multiplayer RGS.
So let's return to Black Cow's kind of bread and butter, if you will, open gaming architecture, remote gaming server. We've gone over what's new, but this is kind of, as far as I can see, at the core of Black Cow's business. So Can you outline its key capabilities and also what differentiates it from what else is out there?
Yes, so the open gaming architecture's key capability is probably its flexibility. It allows the licensee to completely take as much control as they want over that platform and over their games pipeline. So it contains a game development kit, which enables the licensee pretty easily to build their own game engines and have control over that part. Or that game development kit can be distributed to their partners, so they can have their own partners building game engines for their products, or they can have us use that game development kit to build their own engines. So that gives them complete control of what they're building and what it does and how it does it. And it really is complete control. That there are really no limits on what features can be supported on there. And it can be table games, it can be slots, it can be instants, it can be any kind of single player instant response paradigm game, essentially. So that's the game development kit. As I said earlier, it's industry proven. It's been out there for 8 years, very, very robust. It's been in countless integrations, each of which have added a little bit more flexibility and functionality to it. So it just takes in its stride everything you'd expect an RGS to be able to do, connecting to any kind of wallet system anywhere. And as I said, it's had vast amounts of volume as well. You know, in just one jurisdiction in the US, it's taken just shy of 8 billion bets with DraftKings, and they got 5 jurisdictions. Light and Wonder for their Playzido platform that runs on Ogre, and they have something like 12 instances of Ogre running in various places around the world, allowing them to flexibly offer their own products as well as second-party products as well. So that's how it's being used, and the integration is rapid as well. That's been proven time and time again. So essentially, it allows somebody to develop just their own features, like DraftKings did. They built their own craps game with their own particular spin on the game of craps. Then, after the single player server had been established, we added jackpots to that. So Open Gaming Architecture Jackpots platform, it has a similar philosophy behind it. It allows any kind of jackpot game to be developed, any kind of jackpot feature, because all the jackpot logic is inside the game engine and not the jackpot server. So that enables our jackpot server to be connected actually to any RGS, but if you connect it to the Ogre single player RGS, then that allows any kind of jackpot feature to be added to an existing game. So that's been really popular over the last couple of years, is people wanting to add their own jackpot capabilities and jackpot features to existing games on that platform. And Ogre and the jackpot platform can be used to do that. So we think that's a really good line of business going forward, offering platforms that flexibility, even if they don't already run Ogre, to just add jackpots of their own on top of whatever they've got, without adjusting whatever they've got underneath. That could be a very powerful differentiator for people, to have a unique jackpot that their players cannot get anywhere else, either because of the way that jackpot is played, or the way it's contributed to, or the way it's won. You can have any amount of tiers triggering under any triggering conditions, you know, all the must drops and timed drops and daily drops, all that can be done. So it really enables someone to offer their very own unique product for that. Then the third thing we added to that was the multiplayer side of things, again with the same philosophy, allowing somebody to add their own game engines, their own logic, their own product, and their own pipeline of products under their own control, and build that functionality themselves without having to share it back to us. Incidentally, you know, they don't have to give us the specs for their games if they want to develop them themselves, and that's very attractive to people as well, who are sort of who don't want to be sharing their very precious mathematics and you know, game specs with anyone else. They can put them to themselves and develop them themselves, and they won't. There's no danger that will find its way into their competitors via us, you know, because of that autonomy that Ogre gives them.
I'm going to do that strange thing that most people aren't used to, which is throw a quote back at you that you've previously said. And in our last podcast, you urged the industry, I've got the quote here, to think beyond conventional boundaries and dare to redefine what an RGS should truly deliver. Would you say, I know 12 months isn't a particularly long time, but would you say anything's changed, or your stance has changed in any way or in any regard, in terms of how expectations are evolving or not of the gaming industry towards an RGS?
certainly my stance hasn't changed in that time, for sure. And we still offer the tools to enable that. There is some development in that direction. People are starting to think of trying to differentiate in ways other than just having a different brand on the existing game types that are already out there. But it's still kind of limited in the way people are thinking. Like with multiplayer games, people are still thinking in terms of multiplayer roulette, multiplayer blackjack. And these are obvious ways to use multiplayer for sure. But what people should be thinking of is more like, what if we had a Fortnite-like tournament, and where people are playing and betting and just being part of the experience at the same time. The multiplayer slots go some way towards that. There's a pod of players playing together, and they can be mates playing together, commenting on what's happening to each other. But also, as soon as some event happens to one of those players, then they can all join in on some event. So if one of them goes into a bonus stage where they're surfing together or something, there could be 4 surfboards going along trying to catch waves together. And imagine people interacting with their friends on that. Or imagine a massive multiplayer system where casinos all over the country are joining their players together into something, so that hundreds of people are involved in this in some event, some trying to kayak down rapids in an Olympic sport or something, and whoever comes first gets the main bonus, and there's 100 people there, and there could be 50 prizes. That's massively compelling for to keep players engaged, but also to be able to offer these things uniquely. Whoever can do that is just going to attract all the players, I think. So I think we're getting towards that, but I think people have got to think more along lines of video games market rather than transactional digitization of traditional casino games, and some hybrid of the two as well. I think that's where we'll eventually go, and hopefully we'll have the tools that enable people. We do have the tools that will enable people to do that. Our biggest challenge in our sales process is getting people to understand how flexible our tools are. I can tell sometimes by the questions people are asking that they're not thinking in that flexible way. It's almost like, what color can this be? It can be any, well, what about blue? Yeah, it can do blue. Orange as well. Yeah. Well, red as well. Any of those colors. What, black? Yep, they can do black as well. People are just limited to, what about things that aren't colors? What about a complete spectrum of iridescence that isn't even a color? What about thinking outside the box? And people are afraid to risk thinking outside the box, of course, because they know they can make a bunch of money with an Irish theme and an Egyptian theme slot. But let's try and innovate, and that now the tools will be available for people to innovate with, and in a relatively cheap way as well. That's the important thing. It mustn't be too expensive to experiment with this stuff. Let's put a game live. Let's try it, see how it works, and adjust it. And that's very much behind our approach with rapid application development. It's much more about cheaply and quickly producing something that we can get out there and see how people react to it, and then iterate on that on that product, and just keep changing it, keep reacting to what people say about it, and what people do, and what people like and what people don't like. That's the rapid application development cycle, which is so incredibly powerful, because that really enables true innovation, rather than thinking of big long projects where we deliver an enormous piece of work after 2 years. Those days are gone. We don't have to build software like that anymore. And that isn't how we work with our partners. We work in an iterative way to give people what they want next, rather than eventually. We don't know what we're going to want eventually. We don't know how long it's going to take to eventually get to where you think you want to be in the future. That might be your plan for what's going to happen in the future, but the future is under no obligation to comply. And so let's concentrate on what we can do now. Let's get something useful now, and let's iterate on that. That's what Amazon's been so successful at. They didn't, if you think back to what they were doing in 2000, very, very different to what they're doing now. But all the time they've been successful, and all the time they've been innovating. It can be like that with gaming, certainly multiplayer games, but also single player and jackpots as well.
And finally, what would you say your, I don't want to use the word vision is, but well, I've said it, so I might as well use it now. What's your vision for Black Cow in the long term? And also, where can people who are listening to this or reading this in the magazine, where can they find you over the coming months? Will they find you at IGB Live, for instance, SBC Summit Lisbon, G2E Vegas? Where are you going to be?
Mm-hmm. Well, we'll be at all the major shows, and probably all the less major shows as well. We'll be there somewhere, and you can find us at our website, blackcowtech.uk. And so, my vision is essentially for that flexible approach to development and flexible approach to risk that I talked about. So, and what we at Black Cow are going to offer is we're going to enhance our offering vertically, if you like. So rather than just being a remote gaming server, we're also going to offer more components at the front end and back end, a more complete offering, kits to enable people to build their own content, rather than just ending at sort of at the back end. We're going to start doing more things towards the back office and towards the front end, with more kits to enable people's productivity in there. So I think that is where we're going to expand into. I think we do the application server part of it, if you like, very well. And where we've missed out on business in the past is because it requires quite a lot of other technologies around that application layer. So if we can get more into that, I think that'll be a more compelling offering to people. And that's really the vision, to just enable people to innovate. That's why I started Black Cow in the first place, because I saw how hard it was in the single player world to innovate with new products and new features, just because it costs too much and took too long to add a feature to existing monolithic RGS platforms. So that's why Ogre is structured in the flexible modular way that it is, so that people can innovate on it and build new features under their own control quickly.
Well, thank you very much for coming on, Max, and best of luck with the multiplayer solution as that rolls out. I'm sure it'll be a great success. Everything Black Cow seems to touch does. So thank you very much for coming on.
Thank you very much, Will. Thanks very much. Good to see you.
I hope you enjoyed the podcast. If you want to watch more, why not subscribe to our channel somewhere here.